Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the greatest rock and roll stories in the universe, all from the fans' perspective. It's Rock Stories with the Brummster. Now, here's the host of the show, my rockin' daddy, the Brummster.
Yeah, it is the Brummster. Welcome to Rock Stories with the Brummster, a brand new edition on the heels. By the way, out today, it is officially Valentine's Day, and we are rocking the love this week at rockradio559.com. You can catch all past Rock Stories with the Brummster as well at the Brummster Spotify channel, and the day after the Super Bowl. I mean, it should be a holiday, right? That agreed? Yes. Yes. All hands are raised high. It should be a national holiday. Well, I figured the day after the Super Bowl, I got the Doctor of Love on with me today. Rudy Reyes, a friend of mine for many years, and he also runs an outfit called Rude Dog Entertainment. It is an amazing business where he gets you, the fans of football and sports, and gets you in an intimate setting where you get an opportunity to hear some of the behind-the-scenes stories. He was actually at the Super Bowl in Radio Row this weekend, so it's kind of cool that we get to have him on right after the Super Bowl as well. Rude Dog Entertainment, the man, the myth, the legend, together again for the first time, of course. He's going to talk about rock stories. That's the show here. We pull back the curtain and give you behind-the-scenes rock stories and concert memories from the fans' perspective. You're all about the fans' perspective, right, Rudy? Rudy Reyes on Rock Stories with the Brummster. What's happening, Rude Dog?
What's going on, man? How's everything going?
I'm doing good. What a game yesterday, a nail-biter. You were at SoFi, or you were there at the stadium for Super Bowl. How was it, man? Welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks. I definitely appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. The entertainment was good. I'm not a huge fan of the amount of people that try to cluster on top of the set that was on the half-yard line, or excuse me, the 50-yard line. It just didn't really. I mean, it had a feeling of what it was like back in the 80s and 90s. If anybody is from Los Angeles like myself, you'll know that there was writing going on. There was a writing king verdict, things of that nature that really kind of helped set the tone for the rap movement and the R&B movement that was going on in Los Angeles and overall in the country. Movements were being made with different rock labels, metal labels, R&B labels, Death Row Records with Snoop Dio Double G, and there was a lot. There was a lot to take in. It was exciting, but at the same time, they didn't really have to crowd the stage with 6 people on top of the body that they had at the 50-yard line. But it was fun. It was refreshing. It was different. It wasn't like years past where and I take nothing away from halftime appearances like Michael Jackson or Prince or any other past star, present star, even a future star for that matter. But at the same token, maybe I just wasn't feeling it. I was too busy posting from Radio Row in interviews and conversations with the current, former, and past players on the RudeDogShow.com to really kind of take in the full effect of what was going on. But everybody seemed to like it, although there was a sense of marijuana floating around there somewhere. And of course, whenever you invite guys like Snoop Dogg, that's kind of bound to happen. I think it's, I don't know, I think it's a bunch of hyperbole, in my honest opinion, when it comes to that.
Yeah, instead of SoFi Stadium, it was So High Stadium, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, it was. I don't know who was high or who wasn't, but maybe it was those that had glasses on inside of the stadium. I don't know.
And I saw just, as they went through the medley of all the different hip-hop stars, I saw Dr. Dre, there at the turntables, if you will, kind of being the mastermind, the orchestrator of it all, and seeing that happen and looking at him look up. That's how his career started, was as a DJ. And now here he is DJing the biggest party in town, looking up all around, and oh, how cool. It was very touching. Now, it was probably the first year that we did not get official rock and roll at the Super Bowl, but I would have to say I agree. I think it did rock. So now we're going to get back to Rude Dog Entertainment and also as well what he does special in from the fans' perspective, but also as well from the athletes' perspective, giving you real insight into the Super Bowl and the challenges these athletes are facing and their experiences, etc. Thank you for sharing that with us. By the way, RudeDogEntertainment.com. Go there today to find out more. Okay, rock stories with the Brummster. Time to pull back the curtain. I picked you to come on the show because you have been hanging out with one of my good buddies, Jay Orlowski, for a while now, and we used to hang out back in the day, and I remember you telling stories all the time of some of the cool experiences that you've had, and I'm like, I gotta have Rudy on the show. Take our listeners back behind the scenes, some cool rock and roll memories. What are some cool rock memories that you have, Rude Dog?
Back in 2014 when I first started it was just an epiphany. The entire concept, what I was trying to accomplish, wasn't really well received by most. Only from the standpoint of, I had a lot of naysayers. This is just a hobby, or you'll grow out of it, or some type of euphemism. And there's nothing wrong with that necessarily, but that was not the train that I was on. I was on a different train, going about 150 miles an hour. Of course, I'm talking about car speed and not train speed. But when you think of a lot of the experiences with early interviews that I had, and we're not talking athletes, we're talking rock stars, guys that have been there, done that, on the road, and had surgeries, and so many different types of situations they found themselves in. Tom Keifer comes to mind. He had a brand new album, and it just premiered. This was after multiple throat surgeries. He was battling some personal issues. He was going to head out on tour after a brand new album he created in studio. And it was fantastic because, first, I never thought I would ever speak to Tom Keifer. Of course, everybody remembers him from Cinderella. And, you don't know what you got till it's gone. By far, one of my favorites. The first time I heard that, speaking of Valentine's Day, there was a young lady I did not know, a secret admirer, just to kind of give people insight as to what Valentine's Day means to them. She had a crush on me, and I didn't know that. Of course, back in the day, I wasn't the best-looking guy, and clearly not the kind of person that you would think, this is my Valentine. No, not really. So one day, I go home, and this was junior high school, and she leaves a flower, one single rose red blood flower, and a 45. And I thought to myself, well, that's pretty unique. Of course, back in the day, records were still the hot thing with companies like Licorice Pizza, and people thought they served pizza, which is by far the funniest thing ever. And they served up, hot presses, hot music, metal, rock, you name it. And I came home and I looked at this and I said, well, what is this? Of course, the label itself wasn't clearly seen until I put it on. Everybody has to get those adapters for vinyl records, and I'm a huge vinyl guy, so I stuck that 45 with the adapter right in the middle. You already know what I'm talking about, right? Right? Nod your head, yes. So,
yes.
All of a sudden, I pop this thing on, and the needle goes on, and I hear the opening piano riff, and I thought to myself, wow, this is awesome. So I listened to the entire song. I thought to myself, that was so sweet of her on Valentine's Day to give me something that was from her heart. And I think, obviously, the song was extremely subliminal, to say the least, but it was something, and I still didn't know who it was, even to this day, to be honest with you. But it was so refreshing to hear this piece of artistry from Tom Keifer and Cinderella. It was so rhythmic. It was so dynamic, and the feeling Tom had in his voice and his vocal patterns and his pinnacles and his drops and his lows and just the overall crescendo, within the song. It's just absolutely fantastic. So when I had a chance to interview him, I told him the story. offline before we started interviewing, and he said, "Man, that is so cool." He said, "Did you enjoy the song?" And I obviously explained to him, and I love the song. It was fantastic. He said, "Well, you should go get the album then." And I said, "Well, I kind of already had the album, and I don't know where it is now, but I'll always remember the song." And I was so excited. I almost could not contain myself talking to Tom Keifer of Cinderella. And when asked, and of course, you're not going to get a rock star, just so you know, that's going to actually tell you who he enjoys touring with versus the ones that he does not enjoy touring with. But I had to ask him that question anyway. And his response was, "I don't have a response." He said, "I can't tell you that. I can't say who I enjoyed touring with, whether it was Van Halen or, any other rock band out there, Iron Maiden, maybe." I mean, there was no way to know. And I could never read his mind to know exactly what he was saying. This was before Zoom, this was before any video software was available back in 2014. But such a very nice guy, very accommodating. Interview lasted for about 30 minutes. And one of those guys where one of those guys you find at a backyard barbecue, just telling you stories. And the way that he does it, it was awesome. And of course, he kind of dove into what his life was like, and during Cinderella, post Cinderella, throat surgeries, and finding out he had these adenoids that were very bad, and polyps. I mean, it was a very amazing story. I got to find that audio somewhere in my archives. But just extremely enlightening, speaking to him. It was such a one-on-one. I'd love to have broken this for MTV, but again, MTV was too busy showing 16 and pregnant shows at that time. It kind of phased out of the whole rock scene. I remember when the Headbangers Ball was on, and of course that was something that was on late at night after your parents went to sleep, and you turn it on, and you'd seen guys like Lars Ulrich from Metallica, or you run into Jeff Tate from Queensryche. These guys just kind of floating in and around Headbangers Ball. But there was a couple mainstays. Lead singer of Anthrax, I believe, was one of the mainstays as the host of the show. So it was fantastic to see that. But it was just a great interview overall. I loved talking to him. If I had a chance to shout out and kind of say, "Hey, Tom, how are you? Hope everything's well." He came out with, I think, 2 more albums after that one, if I'm not mistaken. And
Cinderella. You're talking Headbangers Ball memories, man. That's right. Before they aired 16 and Pregnant or whatever else that they put on. MTV used to actually play music videos, and they played a lot of them. Yeah, these Headbanger Ball memories, man. You're bringing us back, dude.
Well, those are the days that I remember, and it was so funny because I truly enjoyed the variety of music, and of course most of it was pop music, and you had your Enough's Enough, and you had Poison and all that business. But that music specifically did not belong on Headbangers Ball. I'll be honest with you, it didn't, and I think it turned a lot of people off, or maybe due to their commercial success. For those individual respective bands, they decided to put them on Headbangers Ball. I wasn't into that pop, glam, wearing makeup type of metal, rock, whatever you want to, pop rock, I guess. I was more into like Maiden, Metallica, Ronnie James Dio, some Exodus, King Diamond. Again, there was so many different varieties of metal that has now taken a whole new meaning with channels like Sirius XM that have their own, sets of music, and you listen to the different genres, and those are specific to the 70s, 80s, 90s, 60s, 50s, and so on. But man, it was great talking to him. I wish I could do it again, to be honest with you. I may be able to find his agent, maybe have that conversation. But I remember there was another one who, it's kind of funny because when you listen to him, it's almost as if you couldn't ever think in a million years that English was not his native sound. So the sound that he made for Whitelion was not what he actually sounds like. He actually has a very thick accent. He's Danish. And it's Mike Tramp, former frontman for Whitelion. And it was very interesting to hear and kind of dissect, honestly, what he was saying and how he was saying it and the phrases. And it was so thick and rich. It's like I'm talking to him from Switzerland. You know, it's just he's just one of those guys. Very nice guy, by the way. And it was very cool to actually talk to him because he just gave me a ton of insight in regards to, you know, his kids growing up, what was it like with Whitelion, the rise and the fall of the band, how did it happen, what was the deal, was there artistic, you know, differences between them, and of course, you know, whenever you have a band, that's what happens. When you're a solo artist, you have conflicts with your songwriters. Well, he had conflicts within the band. What was the direction? Where were they going to go? How were they going to get there? Musical differences as well. You know, but again, you can kind of chalk that up to every band, even boy bands, NSYNC, and so on and so forth.
Well, and even balancing out the fact that, you know, they had to deal with grunge being on the horizon. You know, bands like Cinderella and Whitelion are seeing Nirvana and Pearl Jam just around the corner, stealing the hearts of millions. So it didn't take away from those who really love metal, but it took that slice of pie that, you know, made up such a big part of the pie, musically speaking, for quite a long time in the 80s. There was that crescendo that moved over into the grunge era, right? Was that a big challenge for Whitelion?
It was a huge movement in general for all the things that you knew and felt and were connected to in the 80s from a musical standpoint. You know, I've seen Iron Maiden a dozen times. I've seen Dio a couple of times. I've seen Judas Priest, Testament, Slayer. Slayer was absolutely crazy down in San Bernardino, if anybody knows where that is, down south in the Inland Empire, my hometown. There were so many different types of movements outside of the 80s genre. So when you were talking about rock and grunge, you have your Nirvanas and your Pearl Jams, and you had all these different bands that were almost eclectic in nature, and they were taking a different set of listeners, people who wanted just something different, you know, and even though metal was very different, but it was only different for so long. I mean, even bands like Iron Maiden knew when to call it a day. Not that they don't have a new album out, they do, but it's not the same. It's not the same feel. It's not the same musically, right? Because Bruce Dickinson also dealt with his own physical battles and throat battles, and you know, when everybody believes that when you're using your vocal tones, for some reason you always have them. Like you'll wake up the next day and your voice will be the exact same way. Not the case. We're talking muscles work in synchronicity to produce the sound. Even the sound coming out of my voice, I didn't have that when I was 18 years old, I can assure you that. And I know that if I overextend myself, that at some point I have to give my voice a break. Well, these guys didn't. These guys were grinders. I mean, they spent years in the studio, years on the road, multi-world tours, things of that nature. So when you had other bands who were basically coming in after them, you can't compete anymore. Vocally, musically, you can't challenge the audience anymore. The ones who used to buy your CDs, the ones who used to buy your vinyl, your 45s, your 33 and a thirds, those things were gone by the wayside as now CDs and obviously today with streaming audio that I take a part in, to be quite honest with you, quite frequently because it's so much easier than popping in a CD, worrying about it getting scratched and so on and so forth. But to answer your question, yes, no, it was a completely different movement, taking the revenue, taking the notoriety, taking the awareness, taking center stage versus what these guys brought to different arenas for, you know, well over 30, 40 years. And you still have some bands that are doing it.
Very few bands can match or do anything near what Aerosmith, for example, or Metallica. These are bands that were able to transcend. They were able to go above and beyond like eagles and fly over the storm and maintain their dominance through all of these changes. But now all of a sudden, 30 plus years later, you know, we're looking back at some of these cool 80s bands and these metal bands, and we're looking back at the hair bands, we're looking back at the grunge, we're looking back at all these pieces of our musical history, and it's not lost. It's something that's coming out even I'm seeing all these rock stations like rockradio559.com, where you hear 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s and stuff in the stuff, you know, from the 2000s. And you hear metal, you hear classic rock, you hear Bob Dylan, you hear everything. It's like a potpourri of rock. It's amazing how in this world of digital streaming, like you're talking about, how the fans have really driven everything, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The type of connectivity that I wish I had with some of the bands that were back in the 80s, and if social media had been a part of that, it would be a whole different animal. But clearly, there is a continental divide between those rock bands, metal bands, classic rock bands that will always have something in common. They were the first. When I say the first, I mean in the sense of being able to move people. You go back to the Beatles in the 1960s, and there was such a movement within the U.S., within the U.K., and I'm a huge Beatles buff, and I really believe that back in the day, they relatively set the trend. Were they the most posh when it comes to their outfits and things of that nature? Maybe not, until 1967. And in 1967, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band premiered here in the U.S., reached number one, and for obvious reasons. I mean, you had, you know, the self-titled track within the album. You had A Day in the Life, which was an absolutely fantastic climactic ending to a song that didn't actually set to start that way. It wasn't set to finish that way either. But for some reason, they found a way to think outside of the box. And bands like Metallica, bands like Judas Priest, you know, those guys that are still out there, like Aerosmith, as you mentioned, still out there trying to make a name for themselves, doing what they do best, clearly shows that there can be a more, how can I explain this, a more connected front when it comes to following what Steven Tyler is doing, or following what James Hetfield is doing, or maybe I remember when Neil Peart died of Rush. People from all over the world were completely, and myself, a huge Rush fan. And when Neil Peart died, it was like rock stopped. Same feeling that I got when Kobe Bryant passed away. You know,
Right.
Sports just stopped that day. So when you look at where you're at right now, you only wish that you had that type of connectivity with your fans back then. Unfortunately, with all these bands that have disappeared over time, you know, you're Enough's Enough, you're Poison, you're Cinderella, gosh, and there's so many other bands, even Bon Jovi to some extent.
Oh,
I know John Bon Jovi is still doing some
you just
touring
look at
here and there.
a Geico ad and you'll see that, what is it? Honey, we have a rat problem. Round and round, right?
Right, yeah, I love that. That, you know, Stephen Pearcy has also battled a lot of personal issues with drugs and alcohol, and vocally as well. Because again, if you abuse your body, just like sports athletes, you abuse your body, eventually it's going to come back to haunt you. And that's exactly what happened with guys like Stephen Pearcy, whose women back in the 80s, oh, I love you, Stevie. You know, it's just one of those groupie things that rock chicks did back in the day. They did the dark makeup around the eyes, and, you know, they dyed their hair black, and you know, there's so many metal chicks walking around giving you the horns, you know, at concerts and things of that nature. And my theory was this: they would never look at me the right way; they would only look at me the wrong way. But it was just so fun knowing I could go to these concerts and still be able to, you know, enjoy all of the fans and all the people and all the different personalities and things of that nature. That's why it was so refreshing, by contrast, to actually see people at this year's Radio Row, because the year prior there wasn't one. And the year before that, in 2020, there was very few people. It wasn't a big hoopla there. You know, there was nobody in the stands relatively. It was maybe a quarter in capacity in Miami. But to see people, you know, just be out there and be themselves without being jackwagons, without, you know, being miscreants, and learning how to say when, you know, and know when to say when. Certainly a lot of great things happen during concerts. A lot of things did, you know, not so great things happen during concerts. And But you know, one thing's for certain: no matter what, when the lights go down, when the lights go out, it's time to party. You know, it's time to get ready for the big music on stage. And like I said, I've been to a lot of concerts, and that's certainly something I really look forward to.
Oh,
if I ever go to a next one.
You're opening that door on me, Rude Dog. By the way, rudedogentertainment.com. You need to go there. All of your post-Super Bowl analysis is available at rudedogentertainment.com. Rudy Reyes on the line with us. Rock Stories with the Brummster. Real rock stories behind the scenes from the fans' perspective. Listen to all of your Rock Stories episodes, past episodes, and more on demand at the Brummster Spotify channel, and also as well at rockradio559.com. Okay, you opened the door for me, Rude Dog. All right. Your favorite concerts of all time. Okay, you mentioned Slayer, you mentioned Iron Maiden, and you did all that in passing because we were on another subject, but I made some notes. You are a rockin' dude. You love concerts. Tell our fans, man, what were your favorite concerts, man?
You know, oh my gosh, I don't even know where to begin. There's so many different concerts that I really enjoyed. It would have to, the last concert I went to was Metallica, and it was Hardwired. And if anybody had been to that concert at the Coliseum in Los Angeles, that was fun. I had not been to a concert prior to that one for better part of maybe 15 years. And that was fun from different perspectives. The whole stage was labeled Metallica, from the M to the A. The guys were playing in the middle. They played everything, and they played really well. They played really hard. And I'm not one of those guys that are going to stand there and headbang anymore, you know, and I don't have any hair either, but it was just, it was fun. It was fun. It was definitely probably one of the better concerts, but that certainly ranks up in my number three. My number two favorite concert, I would have to say, is I hate to say "Don't Pray for the Dying" from Iron Maiden. The problem is that it was the audio sound, the quality of sound was not the best, and I mean that wholeheartedly. And I don't mean the band; I just mean the general audio that was coming out of the speakers. I really tried to kind of get engaged, knowing what they sound like on a studio track versus a live track.
Same thing happened the first time I saw Pat Benatar in Tulare. Something was wrong with the speakers, and it kind of sucked. And I remember my friend Greg Hatley telling me, "Oh man, Pat Benatar, she's awesome. I just wish they weren't having this problem with the speakers because we're not getting true justice." I see Pat Benatar, introduce her on stage and live in Hanford at the Fox Theater, and I'm up there with Pat and her husband Neil, and just front row seats, and holy smokes, there were no problems then. So you're telling me the same thing happened, that, you know, Iron Maiden was on point. It was really just a speaker issue or something to do with the sound system, technicalities?
Yeah, right. There had to have been some type of issues, whether or not they had fixed it during the concert, or maybe some type of, they don't have halftime there. I wish they did. That'd be great. Maybe in between sets, obviously, would have been fantastic. The problem is, unfortunately, is they didn't make any adjustments at all whatsoever. So it's kind of sad, to say the very least. Hopefully they'll actually get that fixed for the next concert moving forward, or maybe they did or didn't. My number one favorite concert of all time would have to be Dio in 1989. And that was at the Long Beach Arena in Long Beach, California. And he was fighting a dragon with a laser-ended guitar on the end of it.
Oh, how badass, dude!
That was fantastic. I was 6 rows from the stage, and it was amazing. On my way, I had shown one of the security guys, because you have the side seats and you have floor seats, and I showed the guy my actual ticket to get in. Well, he slammed me in some type of chair, I guess. I don't remember. It kind of knocked me silly. But he apologized after he seen the ticket and brushed me off. And there was an empty row, like in the 6th spot, which wasn't where my tickets were. They were in the 9th spot. So he said, "Here, you can sit here." So I sat there, and of course I wasn't sitting; I was standing. But I was just rocking out with the limited hair that I had. But I still rocked out. It was fun. It was fantastic. Dio was, 5 foot on a good day, wearing heeled, shoes, of course, short guy. But his voice it just carries you. It takes you into a whole different dimension. Of course, the late great Ronnie James Dio, somebody who will always be remembered for just being so kind and so considerate, and what he gave to the heavy metal community that other bands did not, or on their way to doing just that. But Ronnie James Dio certainly missed, to say the very least. First album I ever heard from him, obviously, was not Rainbow. It was Holy Diver, and I play that album probably once a week from beginning to end. It was fantastic. It was really fantastic. One that didn't make the cut, I must say, was Queensryche. And I say that because I love Queensryche. I love OPMC2, Operation Mindcrime 1. The second album, not such a good effort, but it was their album. Oh my gosh, I'm trying to think of the name of the album, but they had appeared in, my gosh, where was it? It was in Southern California. It was at I guess they have this convention that happens in like the 1700s. Anyway, so it was a good concert. It wasn't great. They didn't play a lot of the old stuff. They were focused. I think they played the entire album, but it wasn't, sequentially 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It was one. Let's go back to Queen of the Reich. Let's go back to, another older song, and then let's go back to the new album. I didn't really like that ping pong effect, but musically and from a sound standpoint, fantastic. The auditorium, not auditorium, but the outdoor theater was absolutely fantastic. Audio was on point. That's when Chris DeGarmo was still in the band, frontman, guitarist for Queensryche. Of course, he quit thereafter. A couple albums later, I think he left after Tribe, if I'm not mistaken. But didn't have the same sound, didn't have the same quality. Not a gigantic fan of a lot of their newer albums, and of course they disbanded. But Jeff Tate has a new band called Operation Mindcrime. Go figure. That's out. He's doing his own thing, doing some tour dates and things of that nature. So great to hear from Jeff Tate. I always loved his vocals, but Queensryche was their own entity. So whatever they had, the feeling was certainly something to always remember. But that concert just didn't quite make the cut because they were bouncing way too many places. And for me, I'm not really a fan of that. I mean, if you're gonna play something old, start with some old stuff, then you work your way progressively into some newer stuff. But yeah.
Rock Stories with the Brummster and our guest, Rudy Reyes from RudeDogEntertainment.com, the king in sports. If you want to find out anything sports related, we're talking behind the scenes stuff, talking with the players, post Super Bowl especially. You want to go there. He was in Radio Row at SoFi Stadium yesterday, RudeDogEntertainment.com. Wow, taking us on quite a tour of rock and roll history, brother. Thank you so much. Real rock stories with the Brummster from the fans' perspective. Metallica, Iron Maiden, Dio. Interviewed Tom Keifer from Cinderella, rocking Whitelion as well. Quite a bit of memories today, walking down memory lane. Thank you so much for rolling back the curtain, letting us come inside and live vicariously through your rock and roll history, man. Rudy Reyes, before we go, I want people to have a mind's eye as to how great of a time they can have partnering with you at RudeDogEntertainment.com. Now, let's go there. I want to promote you, buddy. You are an awesome talent. And it isn't just that you're amazing on the microphone, you are. It's how you're able to get in and get these cool players to talk. And I mean, open up. That's what I mean by talking, by opening up and not just talking about the X's and the O's. There's so much you can find out. NFL, all sorts of different sports. I'm speaking NFL specifically because the Super Bowl was yesterday and you were there. Tell our listeners here at Rock Stories with the Brummster, what kind of flavor, what kind of taste of behind-the-scenes sports can they touch, can they taste, can they be a part of if they go to rudedogentertainment.com?
Well, they can go to the rudedogshow.com. They can look at, I have various menus. There are so many different aspects and avenues. Some pages have tons of content, some pages don't, only because, clearly, interviews, conversations, things of that nature have sometimes fell through, so not able to capture the essence of having an interview, of talking to a guy who's been there, done that, playing the game of life, as well as playing the game inside and outside the NFL. Just a lot of different types of conversations. You can go to therudedogshow.com. You can go to Super Bowl LBI, which is 56 for those that aren't into Roman numerals. In Inglewood, and of course Radio Row was fantastic. It was a ghost town, however, on Saturday, which was to be expected because everybody from a broadcast media perspective were either flying back or they were staying for the game, whatever the case might be. But I happened to run into NFL Network's own Ian Rappaport. If anybody knows who Ian is, he's the guy who's always on his phone, always getting the latest and greatest of news, and more importantly, I had a chance to meet him while he was on his way into the set, one of the last sets that were there on that site. So it was great to meet him. It was fantastic. He said, walk with me, because he was headed to the very last TV set that was left there at the stadium. It was fantastic. It was really great. Again, if you want great conversation, if you want to know who's inside, who's outside, who is trying to bid to get into the NFL. I have draft pages with past draft conversations. I have new draftees that I'll be interviewing as well. And then you guys could always go and find the show that I have with Barry Long the second. We got a new name, but right now it's live. I'm sorry, it's been a long day, but anybody can go find the show. It's on the rudedogshow.com. If you go to Go Long Live with Rudy Reyes and Barry Long II, you'll find those interviews there as well. So a lot of great content. We get average 1,400 viewers / listeners on the Facebook as well. So we're trying to translate that into an actual show somewhere. So stay tuned for that one. So I'll keep you updated on that, Josh.
Excellent. Go Long Live. You can find out more behind the scenes, actually opening up with these athletes and getting to hear the real behind the scenes stories, just like we do here at Rock Stories with the Brummster. Go to Rude Dog Show, excuse me. It's not a rude show. It's a very polite show. What the,
it is actually quite polite.
Yeah, what the hell, Brummster? No, I'm just kidding. RudeDogShow.com, Rudy Reyes. Go Long Live, a new show that you have as well. Love you, brother. Thank you for sharing your behind-the-scenes rock stories with us today, man. Thank you so much, Rudy. Before we let you go, any parting words that you have for our listeners before we let you go?
Well, to be honest with you, it's just a matter of reading beyond the headlines, understanding who these players are, men and women alike, because that will give you the insight that other shows may not be able to give you, because, again, they're humans just like we are. They have situations just like we do, but it's not how you start, it's how you finish, and it's not the situation, it's how you handle it.
You handle it amazing. RudeDogShow.com. That's RudeDogShow.com, Rude Dog Entertainment. Rudy Reyes, thanks for rocking with us today. Hang on the line for engineer, sir.
Great, thank you.
Rock Stories with the Brummster. Behind the scenes rock stories from the fans' perspective. You can catch it every single Sunday at rockradio559.com, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, or on demand. That's 2 M's. On demand, go to the Brummster Spotify channel. By the way, every single day, if you'd like to get a free, brand spanking new every single day for free, Today, This Day in Rock History, Today in Rock History with the Brummster. Every single day, it's for free at the Brummster Facebook page. Be an FOB, a friend of the Brummster. I will see you there. Really enjoyed that today. Again, go check it out, especially if you love sports. Our rock and roll rock stories guest today, Rudy Reyes, rudogshow.com. Go there today. Go long live is going to be an amazing show they're doing, and you can catch up on that and much more. Thanks again for joining us for Rock Stories with the Brummster right here at the Brummster Spotify channel and rockradio559.com. Have a rockin' day. Thanks.